All right, welcome everyone to the Return to School Steering Committee meeting. I want to start off by introducing members of the committee. I'm Pat Hopkins, Superintendent of Schools. Becky Fless is School Board Chair and Co-Chair of this committee. Becky, can you say hi?
I can. Hi.
Veronica Babcock is the School Board Vice Chair.
Hello.
There's a background noise. If you could put yourself on mute until you're called, that would be helpful, please. Thank you. Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum Instruction.
Good afternoon.
Alicia Morris, the Director of Special Services.
Hi.
Karen Moody, Principal at the Laura E. Richards School.
Hello.
Gabe Dostie, the Director of Operations, will be joining us shortly. Jared Dumas, the Gardner Area High School Assistant Principal. Jared, can you say hi?
Hello, sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you. Nate Stubert, the Athletic Director for the school district. Nate?
Hello.
We have Katie Gould, the Helen Thompson Principal.
Hi, everybody.
Dean Hall, a middle school teacher and the President of the Teachers Association.
Hello.
Mary Whitten, teacher at the science teacher, department head at the high school.
Hello, everyone.
Patsy Adams, a grade 5 teacher at the Pittston Randolph Community School.
Hello.
We have Michelle Ayotte, a Gardner parent.
Hi.
And Molly Rogers, a West Gardner parent.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see you. I'm going to kick us off. Hopefully you all had a chance to look at the agenda for today. Again, it is extremely lengthy. It's been requested of me that we make a slight modification to the agenda. So rather than starting off with instruction, I'd like to start off with athletics. So I'd like to turn it over to Nate. And if you would please give us an update from your committee.
Yes, thank you, Pat. I appreciate the adjustment in the agenda. Can everybody hear me okay, I hope? I'm in my vehicle. So I just wanted to update the committee on what the athletic committee talked about during our last meeting, which was last Tuesday. We actually have a recommendation for this committee to open up our outside athletic fields to Gardner-based youth sports beginning on September 1st. There are some parameters involved. It would be for Gardner-based youth programs only. So we're talking Gardner Youth Football, Gardner Youth Soccer, which I just found out Friday that Gardner Youth Soccer is not going to have their youth soccer this year. So that's been canceled, so we don't need to worry about soccer anymore. It would be open for Gardner Youth Football and Gardner Youth Field Hockey, essentially. So they'd be using the high school football field and the high school field hockey field. They would have to operate under the same parameters that the high school athletes have to operate under, which means wearing masks when possible, spatially distancing, doing the COVID checklist that our athletes have to complete before every workout, clean and sanitize equipment after every use, and so on and so forth. Each organization would have a designated COVID response person that would have to be responsible for taking the accurate attendance every day, also doing the COVID checklist, very much like our coaches are doing right now with our athletes during their summer workouts. And I would be responsible for meeting with the president of each organization and also those people involved in doing those checklists to go over proper procedures before they use our facilities. So that's our recommendation. There's a little bit more in depth when I would send out all the information to those organizations that we get from Maine General and also from the MPA and CDC.
Nate, when would they begin practicing?
Okay, thank you. I forgot that part. So they would begin practicing on September 1st, and we would not allow games to be played on our fields until September 19th. The reason for that is high school games can start on September 18th, and we just didn't feel right that youth sports would be playing games on our fields before our high school would be playing games on our field.
Are there any scheduling concerns that they would conflict with our high school teams?
There could be, but certainly high school would take priority over that. Typically, those two sports, football and field hockey, would be playing on weekends. So typically football, it's a Saturday, and field hockey, field hockey is the same thing, Saturday or Sunday.
Pat, I have a question. So Nate, what equipment of the high schools would they be using that they would be responsible for cleaning, or is the equipment all their
None.
own? Okay.
The equipment's all their own. They don't use any of our equipment.
Okay.
But we want to put them under the same protocol just for everybody's safety.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one, Nate. If the
Yeah.
MPA comes down at some point and modifies or cancels seasons, will they be basically held to that same standard or rule?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
That would certainly be the expectation from myself, and I'm assuming the committee would follow suit.
Molly?
Is there a reason it's limited to just those two sports, or are you looking to have that go? I know there's other sports that are happening right now, having to travel other places. And if they were able to follow the same protocols, is there a reason it's just those two, or is there like an approval process for other sports to try and use
So the
facilities
committee,
as well?
good question, Molly. The committee decided that it was going to be Gardner-based youth sports only. So no like Gardner-based, like 100% Gardner-based youth. And those in fall sports only. So we're not talking about basketball or winter sports or spring sports or anything right now using our facilities, just fall sports only. So it was essentially soccer, Gardner Youth Soccer, Gardner Youth Football, and Gardner Youth Field Hockey were the three that we identified as the three sports that would need our facilities. I can't think of any others that would need our facilities and rely upon us to use our facilities in order for their programs to operate. So that's how we came to that decision as a committee.
Katie?
Nate, last time you talked about the difference between high school sports and middle school sports. I wondered, is there an update on middle school sports? And
Yes,
are
thank you.
middle
Yes.
school age kids able to play in the Gardner Youth Leagues?
I didn't hear your second question, Katie.
So I would just wonder what the update is on middle school sports. And then are our middle school age kids able to play in Gardner Youth sports?
It depends on their age and which sport it is. So for some sports, it's by grade, and some sports it's by age for youth. So it depends on what sport it is and if they still fit into that age category. I do have an update on middle school sports. That's my next update. So if anybody has any other questions on the facility use stuff, I'll answer that, and then I'll get to the update on middle school.
Before you get to middle school, Nate, can you just talk a little bit more about the Maine Principals Association's guidelines for high school students returning to be able to practice and for their games? You said that the games can begin on September 18th. What is the day in which they can begin practicing versus just training?
Okay.
And what does the practicing look like?
Okay, so that's a good question. Right now, the practicing, the first day of fall sports is scheduled to begin on September 8th. So that's tryouts. There haven't been any details outlined about what that's going to look like. The assumption is it's going to be full on. Right now, we're in phase 3, which is still conditioning with some sport-specific activities that can take place. Phase 4 begins August 24th, and that is only for fall athletes. So right now, phase 1, 2, and 3, every sport can be participating, just like a normal sport, but it's for conditioning only. Phase 4 changes that, and it makes it only for its fall sports can continue their conditioning without any like contact. There can't be any sort of one-on-one sort of activities or things like that. It's more conditioning. with some skill specific, like if everybody has an individual ball, they can be working with skill specific drills. The start of the fall preseason, which is tryouts and everything, on schedule for September 8th, I'm assuming is going to look like our normal fall preseason. Although that hasn't been, I don't know how it can't look like that if we're starting your full games in 2 weeks. So I believe it would have to look like that. But again, those updates haven't been given out by the MPA as of yet.
And what about special equipment that we need to purchase for students, such as masks?
Yeah.
I hear that there is a special mask available that football players and others could wear.
Yep, so I put that on the request form on the resource committee to purchase 200 masks. They're not masks, they're buffs actually, or gaiters. And it's like a sleeve or a sock that can be pulled up over their face and then brought back down when necessary. The athletes, our football players, have purchased them as a team, and they like them. They're a little bit more breathable. They're a little bit more lightweight. They're more comfortable to wear. And the discussion is now taking place about whether our athletes need to wear some sort of face covering during competition. That hasn't been decided yet, but if it is, we'll be ready.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. If nobody else has any more questions, I can move on to middle school update.
I have a quick
Yes.
question. This is Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. Just for clarification, when you say Gardner-based
Yep.
athletics, we mean MSAD 11, right? Correct? Just for anything.
It's Gardner Youth Football. Essentially, we're talking about Gardner Youth Football and Gardner Youth Field Hockey
And
right now.
Right, and I understand that, but MSAD 11 students
Yes.
participate.
Very similar to how we use our facility use.
Yes.
Our levels. Like yes.
So I just want people that are watching this to understand it doesn't mean you have to live in Gardner, but if you're an MSA 11 Gardner youth athlete, that this pertains to you as well. Just
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
Okay, so I believe last meeting or the meeting before, I talked a little bit about middle school sports, and that middle school sports are not under the jurisdiction of the MPA. However, we still follow the same rules and regulations. There really hasn't been a whole lot of talk about middle school sports as of late. Everybody was waiting on what the MPA was going to decide for high school sports, and then the middle school will kind of follow suit. So the last announcement, the big announcement, was last week, where it gave the specific dates about fall sports starting at the high school level. We have an athletic directors meeting scheduled for August 13th, and that's our Capital Area League, our middle school league, where I'm sure there'll be a lot of decisions made on that during that meeting. But my expectation is that we're going to move forward with fall athletics at the middle school level. But again, we have nothing specific as far as schedules and who we're going to be playing and how many games we'll be playing in each sport. Unfortunately, that's all the information we have from middle school. Whereas that was coming in so late, the MPA's announcements for high school, that's why we're just waiting on middle school. But I firmly believe, and I'm pretty confident, that we are going to have a middle school fall athletic season.
Nate, can you remind us, in a typical year, when do the middle school sports season, when does that begin in comparison to the high school sports season?
Okay, so just so everybody knows, football at the middle school level is not handled by the school district. So typically football, which is the youth program, starts in the middle of August, roughly about the same time that high school fall sports typically start. There's an acclimatization period that the football athletes have to undergo, which is a little bit, different than the other sports. So they typically start earlier. Other sports, field hockey, soccer, and cross country, typically start after school starts. We kind of we give a date with our Capital Area League athletic directors where we come up with a date that we can start, and it's kind of different for every sport, and sometimes it's not the same exact date every fall. So that's the meeting that we're going to have where we can decide those dates, when we're going to start, how many games we're going to have for each sport, and who we're going to be playing.
Great. Thank you, Nate.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Nate? All right, I don't see
Okay.
any. Nate, thank you so much. Really appreciate
you.
it.
Welcome.
All right. Super. All right, then going back to the agenda, we'll move up to instruction, SEL, and technology. Angela.
Great, thank you. So last week we presented the learning plan scenarios, the draft of those, and got your feedback and made some edits. We presented a survey. That survey went out with the proposed edits on Wednesday morning, and the survey closed this afternoon. And so the data from this survey will certainly help us make some decisions as to our level of readiness moving forward as a district. And at this point in time, the response rate is between 67% and 88% of the student population, as dependent upon the school. So it's a fairly good response rate, but we have about 20% of our community or more in some schools that we don't know where they stand. Overall, in the green or the yellow plan, 65 to 70% of our families indicated they would be comfortable sending their child to in-school, to in-person learning. However, upon moving that summary data into a spreadsheet and reviewing the associated comments, it's become very clear that there's at least 10% of that population, if not more, that indicated yes, they will send their child to school, and no, they will not support their child wearing a mask. So that's something we have to reconcile as a community. You know, we have guidelines that we need to follow, and that includes wearing masks. And I think that there's some work that we can do to really help those families feel more comfortable following those guidelines, and I'll indicate some of those coming up. So I'm not sure where in the end, if we'll fall within the 65 to 70% in person, higher or lower. 10 to 13% indicated a remote learning option with a request for more information, of course, that there wasn't enough details, which we knew because we are developing those based on this data and data from our staff survey information. And about 20% of the people who responded indicated they really were still unsure and they just need more details. The details they're looking for include information on masks and the types of masks that are acceptable, how often or frequent students will have opportunities for mask breaks and what that would look like, the details on what the remote learning plan will look like, which we are in the process of developing based on our staff and student numbers. A draft schedule from the different grade spans, which is also under development by all administrators. Details about the visual and performing arts. Will we have band and chorus, and if so, how? Will we have our gifted and talented program at the lower levels, and if so, how? Will we have our physical education program, and if so, how? Cohort designations. We did address that cohorts, as much as possible, are going to be organized by household groups or family groups. And then there's some other factors we're looking at, including addresses and drop-off and pickup locations. I know that the administrative team is working diligently on identifying cohort groups that will match and align from pre-K all the way up to 12 so that we can try to follow those household figures, but we're not in a position yet to share the exact names of who's in each cohort, but we will be. So those are some of the big concerns that came up that will help people be more prepared for kind of their final answer in terms of going back to school. With as many people that said they're concerned about their children wearing masks, just as many people or more said they're concerned that not enough people would be wearing masks. Like they want to be reassured that the mask protocols will be followed, that we will have screening protocols in place for families to follow, that we'll have the health and safety staff, basically our school nurses in each building, really helping follow up on that. And that we'll have some technology to support monitoring. In terms of transportation, we had 30% of our families that responded saying, yes, we'll definitely be using the bus system that we offer. 40% saying, no, we do not plan on using the public transportation, the bus. And that leaves about 30% where there's a lot of individual answers. Like on Monday and Thursday, we'll use the bus, but all the other days we won't. We'll walk to school one way, we'll drive back another way. Those individual responses were kind of unwieldy when sifting through 1,500 of them. But when I reorganize the data to the school level, it's really going to help the building principals get a handle on what that can look like and really share that with the transportation department and help us understand if we can be successful moving forward with the current bus plan. And I'll add, because Pat and I were just talking about this before the call, the Department of Education continues to refine guidance. And so all of this was built upon the guidance that we had at the time. Since then, they've updated the state guidance once. So they updated it in the July 20 something, they updated it July 30th, they updated it again July 31st. The guidelines for schools, and they're working on continuing to refine the guidelines for transportation, and those have not yet been updated. So while we have a plan that the committees have been working on that are impacting the instruction side of things, they will continue. We may need to adjust them based on whatever the final guidance is. So that is kind of the survey in a nutshell. Each of the administrators has now received their building-based level data so that they can start responding to a series of questions we have for them so that we can be best prepared for Thursday's school board meeting to understand what we can possibly do to move forward effectively and responsively to our community. But it's very clear that there is a lot of concern on all ends, whether it's concern that they have to wear a mask or concern for the safety and welfare of their families and our staff. And then there's some logistical concerns if we don't come back full time. And so this is a no-win situation, but we're going to do the best we can to move forward. Just a couple other features that relate to instruction. The Maine Roads to Quality is a network out of the University of Maine system that provides professional development and collaboration opportunities for daycare providers across the state of Maine. And they have coordinators arranged by region. Robin Holman, I believe, is our coordinator in Kennebec County. And she and I and Karen Moody will be engaging in a Google meeting, so a virtual meeting on Tuesday, August 11th at 6 p.m. to ensure that whatever plans we have up to that date are visibly available on our public website, and we can talk through them with daycare providers from MSAD 11 region. So this is specific to the MSAD 11 schools daycare providers. Those providers should have already received an invitation from Robin to join. I will be asking to have it posted on our MSAD 11 Return to School webpage as well. And Karen and I will walk the participants through the MSAD 11 website briefly and the learning plan scenarios and whatever information we have at that time. And then be basically spending the rest of the hour answering questions that the daycare provider has as much as we can. They're submitting questions in advance so we can work on being fully prepared. But it's just another way that we're trying to continue to partner with our community and think about how we can all support each other in really helping our children gain an educational opportunity this fall. So that's the survey. Any questions on that so far?
Survey questions, comments, feedback, just general thinking or general thoughts, I should say. Okay.
And-
Katie had one.
Oh,
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say we had an E-team meeting today, and it's really difficult to try to plan for all of the cohorts when you don't know who's coming back and who isn't. So this survey is going to be very helpful going forward. I was just kind of looking at it prior to the meeting. So thank you for that. It's got a great amount of energy, information in it. So thank you.
Jared?
Thank you, Angela. I'm not sure if it's an appropriate question. I was just thinking, like, how did the results line up with kind of what you were expecting to see? Like, are you surprised? Do you think it's, better than you'd hoped, or lower than you'd like, or just a little context on your thoughts?
I actually, in terms of the number of people indicating that they would like an online option versus the in-person option, that fell just about where I thought it would. I thought we might get up to 20% on the remote, and we're at 10 to 13% at the moment. But we also have about 20% really unsure. And I think as soon as we're able to now move forward and add some clarity to, like, what does that schedule, how will it look and feel if you're in person or if you're remote, or if we move to do both. I think that will really help the folks that are unsure move one way or the other. And so I feel good about that. It certainly continues to elevate the sense of urgency of getting, of moving through a process and getting all the dots connected and everything out into the public eye. We are working as long as we can and as fast as we can to achieve this, but it is a very complex process. I mean, we're essentially redesigning school, which public schools are not known to do. And we are working really hard to do that and try to be very responsive to our community instead of assuming we know what our community needs and wants. And so some of the questions that were elevated were questions that we were pursuing, but now it's clear to me that we also not only need to pursue them, but we need to ensure that when we publish stuff that we have an FAQ, or frequently asked questions page, with as much detailed information as we can possibly provide for families to access on our website. And so I know the communications team is working on it, and the core instruction team will work on the instruction side of it, so that we can start getting that out to families once we release schedules. But so I guess I'm not entirely surprised, Jared, because I'm a parent and I understand what that feels like for my kids in their system.
Thank you.
Katie, did you have a question? Did I see you raise your hand? No, okay. Other questions?
Anything else?
Becky.
Mine's not really a question. It's really kind of a statement. When the green light came out, or the green status came out last week, I think it's a little bit misleading, because there's 6 safety guidelines that have to be met. And so had it been couched in that, wrapped in that, as the requirements, they're not like 6 safety wishes or 6 safety thoughts. There's 6 safety requirements that have to be met. And so when I look at that list of the 6 safety requirements, I think I can't imagine the way that we're going to come back 100% in the green and be able to do those 6 safety requirements, which, as I understand it, are changing or going away. And I have not looked at the website since Friday. I took a couple of days just to be, and I don't know if those 6 safety requirements are out there for families to see so that they can experience the same sort of that we feel as we're trying to put these put together education for our kiddos when it comes to food, to transportation, to mask wearing, to every single piece in the list of safety requirements. I don't want to be a wet blanket, but I just don't know how we're going to accomplish that safely and follow all the rules. And I'm concerned that community members who just don't think their kids can wear masks and don't really want their kids to wear masks. I mean, that's sort of like just the masks is just one small portion of what we're talking about, although it's a big piece, but it's only one of 6 things. And I think the public needs to understand that so that we can all be working together toward being in the green and being in the buildings. And I would personally rather see us, but this is just me, and I'm just me, start yellow to get to green rather than start green and have to back up and go into yellow. I just feel like that'll be so disappointing. And I think that there's great work that could be done in yellow to support our staff, to support our teachers, to support our kids, to support our administrators as everybody sort of gets used to this new, hopefully short-term normal, but normal right now. It is what it is. So that's just my thought.
Mary?
So one of the concerns I have, and it kind of goes along with what Becky was just talking about, is the fact that on the first day of school, when we have kids, we have just our 9th graders at the high school. But on the second day, we have all 600 plus of them. And if we haven't done some training in smaller groups, getting them to follow, especially the upperclassmen who've had different rules than what we're going to have now, different expectations than what we have now. So I was kind of thinking we need to maybe go in with smaller groups, at least for the first couple of weeks, get everything going, making sure they follow the expectations we have in terms of wearing masks and getting used to that and what have you, and then move to the green if that all goes well, as Becky's talking, and just making sure things are going to work. I have concerns about bringing all 600 plus students in on the second day of school and having it go well at the high school.
Jared?
I just want to say that without having decided anything, Chad Kempton and Jackie Perret and I are working on contingencies for the high school if we do decide to go in that kind of a direction with a kind of like a smaller group at the beginning. So Mary, we definitely hear that, and we actually, we're not making any unilateral decisions, but we were putting together what that might look like if that's something that the committee or the board decides that they want to explore.
Katie?
Yeah, along those lines, Mary, I think one of the challenges of communicating is that we have these requirements and they're going to look vastly different in each of our buildings, depending on the age of our kids. But the communications committee is currently just working from a project list. And so one of the things that we've got on the list, once we get a little bit closer and closer to the start and some of the signage comes in, we really, especially for the younger students, but for all of our students, want students to see the real signs that are going to be posted and hung in their spaces, in their learning spaces. So what we'd like to do is create videos, tutorials in each facility to show what physical distancing is going to look like in the buildings, what the lunch line is going to look like, that sort of thing. So I'm just taking notes as you go. And if you have specific ideas about what this could look like, again, because depending on the committee member's perspective and role and the age group that we work with, we all are coming at it from a slightly different angle, but we want to be effective and know that a one-size-fits-all approach to communication, or especially to really reaching our kids, is not going to cut it. So anything that you've got to suggest specifically how to go about that for kids at your level, at the high school, we're all ears. And I'm furiously taking notes about how this frequently asked questions page can shape up. Again, wanting to make sure that the information that we provide as responses to each of the questions stays true and doesn't change, by Wednesday.
Katie, just to add to that, there are some suggestions in the survey from families about what would make them feel more comfortable about knowing and seeing in the school. Some of the families even stated, I recognize that you probably won't have a family open house like you usually do, but if you had a video on what it's like to ride the bus under these conditions, or if you had a video on what it will be like for my child to navigate the building, that would provide a little bit of ease and an opportunity for me to have a conversation with my child. In this morning's court instruction meeting, one of our members did say that the first video that the communications team released about even the plan, what we're doing all summer to get school ready, that her children have watched it multiple times, and they felt better after watching it because they recognized some of the people. It looked familiar. They were listening to the energy that was behind it, that we are working on a plan. And so I really want to send kudos to your team for that level of communication. And I will also ensure that we extract some of those suggestions from families that you might not see from the Helen Thompson School view, but that we can see from the full view, and share them forward with you and Josh Farr as you think about the communications, because some of those videos, there are some great suggestions from families, and that gives us different perspectives from different levels that we can draw from.
Additional comments, feedback to Angela. I guess I would like to add something, Angela. So this Thursday, when we go to the school board, we will be asking the school board to approve the plan that was shared with this committee last week. The green, the yellow, the red, that learning plan. I really feel like in addition to approving the plan, they absolutely need to approve how we're going to open. Are we going to open our schools in green, in yellow, or in red? We've been holding off internally in making any sort of decision or recommendation because we first wanted to receive concrete information from our parents, from our community, and get a better sense of how many plan on sending their students back to school. I want to say real kudos to Angela. That survey was the closing date time for that survey was noon today. And here we are 4 hours later, and she has already compiled that information and has presented us with a remarkable amount of information from that survey today. So thank you, Angela. I know that took a lot of time for you to be able to do that. I would like for us to maybe decide what we feel or what we believe is a recommendation for the board to consider. Based on all of the information that you are hearing from the survey, from the conversations that we've had, I guess I would look to you. Are we prepared to make a recommendation to the board as to whether we should start in green, start in yellow, or start in red? And I'm sorry, Angela, you and I didn't discuss having this conversation. It's just as the conversation is evolving, I'm really feeling like the board has created the structure of these committees, and they will be looking to this committee to be making a recommendation, and they're going to want to know from the people who have been most intimately involved in the development of our plan as to what our recommendation is moving forward. And so as I see it, we could move forward with green. And again, green means that we return to school on a full-time basis as long as we're able to implement those 6 CDC established guidelines. Yellow or remote means we have 2 cohorts We have a cohort that is in school for 2 days, whereas the other cohort is at home receiving remote instruction. You have Wednesday, in which there is no official class for students. That's when teachers, staff would have, they would have office hours. They would be available to support students. They would be their prep time, and the schools would be thoroughly cleaned. And then the following 2 days, on Thursday and Friday, it would be the next cohort. Cohort B and cohort A would be at home. Then, of course, red is that we're all virtual, that everyone is at home in some sort of remote learning environment. That is not something I support at this time. I think if we open up, when we return, we should be either green or yellow. And if we're yellow and or green, again, it doesn't have to be for an extended period of time. It can be for 2 or 3 weeks as we make a transition to another color. It can also be for a quarter. It could be for a semester. Those are certainly conversations that we could have. In speaking with a number of my colleagues around the area, there are many school districts around us that are opening in the yellow. They're opening in some sort of hybrid model. There are some that are doing it for 3 or 4 weeks just to give staff, students the opportunity to get acclimated to the new systems, to work out some of the bugs. Because despite how hard everyone is working to develop the system, I'm certain there will be things that we hadn't thought of. And we will need to be ready on the fly to make adjustments if things don't quite go the way we wish. There are some school districts that are going to open for as a hybrid for an entire quarter. So just because we open in one particular color doesn't mean we have to stay there for any significant period of time. And also, as a reminder, the Department of Education, every 2 weeks, they're going to be announcing the color that each region of school districts can operate within. So we just were told that every school in the state is green. On August 14th, we will find out whether that remains the same or if that changes. And then again on August 28th. So even before school opens, we're going to hear 2 more times from the Department of Education, giving us those guidelines for us to work within. So I guess I would throw it out to your folks. I'm hearing some people kind of say that they are leaning towards a hybrid. Like to hear what others think. And Angela, sorry, do you want to contribute your thoughts?
So going into this, our core instruction team set some value statements that are helping us with our planning process. And one of those value statements was to provide as much in-person instruction as possible, while recognizing that those 6 health and safety measures are requirements that the schools must follow. Some of the families in their feedback suggested that we are making those requirements and suggested that we didn't have to follow them. And that's just not accurate. They are requirements that are set forth by the state, and we must require that it is mandatory that we follow those requirements, whether or not individuals agree with them. We are a school system operating within the state of Maine, and so those requirements must be met. We recognize that not having in-person instruction routinely, as in like 5 days a week, is an incredible hardship for many of our families. And so we have really tried to think of every possible scenario under the sun to move us forward in a green zone. If we still have 70% of our students coming to school in person and 30% working remotely with us, I think we could pull it off. The challenge is we have maybe 70% saying they're coming in person, but we have 20% that are unsure. And if those 20% then feel like our follow-up information makes them feel more comfortable, then we're up to a 90% of our student population in school, and I'm not confident that we're ready for that. As much as I want to, believe me, I'm raising children, and I understand in my own little world how difficult that is. I've spent a lot less time with them this summer than normal, but I feel good about the level of community transmission that our region has, which is very, very, very low. And if that remains very low, then I'm confident that once we learn these protocols and these practices, we really can get up to 90% participation and operate in a green zone. It is that transition point that makes me very uncomfortable. Just as Mary said, and Katie said, and others have spoken to me outside of this meeting. I also agree with Becky that starting all in person and then asking families to adjust backwards is an incredible hardship as well. I would rather plan forward and be as consistent as we possibly can with our expectations of each other as possible. And so with that, if I had to make that decision today, and after reading so many surveys last night and this morning, I am feeling like if we could start in yellow for ideally no more than a month, and then if the state continues to deem that our community transmission rates remain very, very low, and then transition to green, I think everyone would be more comfortable in the long run. No one plan is going to make anyone, all of our community members, happy or feel confident in our work. We just need to do the best that we can possibly do for them. And this is also a hybrid plan is challenging for some of our staff members as well, and I recognize that. But I'm welcome. I really am open to the feelings of this committee. I also am willing to spend the next 48 hours really continuing to dig through the scenarios with this data with the administrators and see like how can we operationalize this so that we are even more prepared for the conversation at the board meeting on Thursday night as to what is our most realistic plan moving forward with safety in mind.
Molly.
I'm just looking for a little clarification, but if 90% felt comfortable going back, are we capable of accomplishing the requirements and accommodating 90% of the student population?
And that's the part where I think I need 48 more hours because I need the administrators to really look at each of their individual responses in their building, which for like the high school, that's, we have up to 600 plus students in that building and we have 483 respondents. And I just need them to recognize they know these students in ways that I don't. So they're going to recognize if someone says unsure, they may have a better sense of what that's going to look like. Karen has a really strong sense of her early learners and their families. And so that's, I just giving us 48 hours to really say, if 90% came back, could we do it? I think it's pretty risky, but we might be able to because I trust the administrators to know their families and to look at that individual data and see how it plays out when we run it through our schedule scenarios. And that's the key.
And my other question is kind of to Becky, but did you say that the requirements were potentially changing? I don't know if I had heard that information. So is there a shift happening with the requirements? And so are we Okay,
Yes.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
So for example, I can just add a piece to that. One very clear change. Last Monday, all children and adults are required to wear face masks. Last Thursday, all children and adults are required to wear face masks in buildings. Last Friday, any 4-year-old and younger, so our pre-K students, are not required to wear face masks unless they're riding our buses. So any child on a bus, even if they're 4, needs to wear a face mask. But in their pre-K classrooms, and unless there's a 4-year-old showing up in our kindergarten who turns 5 on October 15th, which is possible, they would not be required to wear masks. I'm gathering that's because of the way that the data is coming out about transmission rates in our youngest children. That is where that decision is grounded. It's updated on the Maine Department of Ed website. Then they posted something else Friday afternoon that got pulled, and it's being refined today. And I don't know which of the 6 requirements that's whatever the refinement they're working on is showing up under, because it hasn't been reposted yet.
Okay, thank you. I've been trying to find the information, but I'm having a hard time finding the information. So
I will, I'll just link this page that I have open that helps.
And Molly, what makes it really hard to find is that a lot of this is just embedded in that frameworks document. And it's not always front and center, like update.
Why not?
So it's
no.
It is
Thank
my
you.
understanding that the Department of Education has received that feedback, and that they're going to try to begin giving the information to superintendents so that we know when there's been a change to the guidelines, so that we can then share them. Because they're embedded, we may overlook them if we are not provided that information. So hopefully that will begin happening from this point forward. Karen?
So I really want to just kind of piggyback what Angela said. I just perused very quickly my school responses where most are saying yes, they would send their child back. But I don't know those actual numbers for grade levels. And the same thing for the buses. So I really want to look and see, like, so which buses would have less kids on it? Like, we may find that the buses are fine because those 30% of the families not sending their kids are going to make it so we can socially distance okay on the buses as well. So I really feel like we do need a little bit more time to look at our individual data, look at it by grade level to see how that all shakes out. So, I mean, I think when we met with the E-team today, we really talked a long time about social distancing concerns and kept saying over and over again, we need to see our data. We need to see who's sending their kids back and who aren't, so that we can make more of a educated decision, informed decision.
Thank you, Karen. The other piece here that plays a factor is that we have some staff members who may not be able to return to the classroom under these conditions. They may have a health condition. They may have childcare issues of their own. And based upon the Families First Coronavirus Act that was passed back in March, if there are staff members who have childcare issues, then they are allowed under an Extended Family Medical Leave Act, they're allowed time off. And so as school districts around the area are developing their plans, we have staff members that live in many of those area school districts, and their children may not be following the same school schedule that they're going to have to work within in our school districts. So we may have the best intention, desire to bring as many students back as possible into the classroom, but at this point, we can't guarantee that we have the staff either. I know that there are some staff members who are working with their physicians to discuss the possibility of not returning. And in those situations, we still need time to determine how do we provide the in-person coverage. We may be able to have those teachers support online or remote learning instruction, but that we're still going to have students in the classroom, in the buildings, and we will have to figure out how to provide that support. So until we're able to finalize exactly which teachers are not going to be able to return and staff members, that puts us in limbo in our ability to finalize our return to school plan as well. So it's just another factor to consider. Other comments? I'd like to call on like Veronica as a school board member and Michelle as a parent to get your thoughts on this conversation as well.
I had a question when we're talking about do we have to, like, if the majority of the people, we can figure it out and they want to send their kids back and we figure out that it would work, do we have a responsibility to still offer the learning from home piece for the kids who absolutely are compromised or their parents are choosing not to send them back? Like, where does our responsibility to them lie?
We do have that responsibility, and that is why we will be offering we'll be offering an online virtual learning academy pre-K to 12.
Okay.
Veronica or Michelle, any comments about the suggestion that we're floating that we open in a hybrid model for the first month of school?
Hi. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm torn. I really see as many kids in the building as we can have there, Angela said, but I also know that there's uncertainties with wanting to send their kids, teachers. I would only be in favor of starting low if it was for time. Like, even 4 weeks is too long. I think 3 weeks is better to get the kids used to being in the building.
Can I interrupt? Michelle, I think there's some feed, or what is that called? But we're hearing feedback from your phone. If you could mute something there, that would be helpful. Okay, try that, Veronica.
Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
So do I have to repeat myself, or did you hear what I said?
I caught some of it. Just that you feel like a month is too long. That you certainly want to strive to have as many students in person as soon as possible, which we agree, we want the same.
But I also understand that there's too many uncertainties with the survey, and I would feel more comfortable if we knew for sure that 70 were going to send their kids back, 30 weren't. I'm curious, do we know how many students are going to be homeschooled? I'm also curious how that hybrid model works with students who have IEPs. That's a population that I personally feel, because of my profession, need to be in school 5 days a week, or their needs are not going to be met. Is there a contingency plan for the hybrid cohort that allows those kids to be in school 5 days if deemed necessary? I mean, those are just some questions and concerns I have. But I think 3 weeks tops is a good initiation period if we started in yellow.
And Veronica, I will tell you, I don't have any concrete data in front of me, but we are receiving a larger number than usual, or at least it feels that way, of homeschool applications. So, Michelle, did you want to give your input on this conversation, and then we'll move to Becky?
Yeah, my thoughts are, I think that starting in the yellow and doing a time, like a time limited as best you can, like setting a goal of 2 weeks to a month and seeing how the children react. But you may have parents who are saying now, I want to send my kids back, but they're finding that the kids aren't responding well to the guidelines that are set in place, and they change their minds. So then what does that look like? I think it makes sense to start in the yellow and work toward the green. That's my thoughts.
Great, thank you. Becky?
I'm wondering if we have data around the start of school in the first week in October for every year. One of the things that occurs to me is that the first week or so of school, typically without a pandemic, goes pretty well. Then all of a sudden, the petri dish of people being together that haven't been together for the summer and now protracted for 3 more months. But the germs, the mixing of the germs and the changing of the germ bubble, you suddenly have teachers that are out sick, you have students that are out sick. And I'm wondering if everybody's going to think that every runny nose and sniffle is COVID when it's not going to be. We're going to have the common cold. We're going to have all the germy things that we always have every year. We're going to have those again this year. And so that's actually another piece of why I feel like starting yellow and heading into green is a good idea, because we're not going to be able to stop what we couldn't already stop before. And we're going to have a need for substitute teachers. And we're going to, so I think all of those other fears and worries will be heightened regardless because of where we are when they aren't. We also always struggle with having enough subs any given day. So when we combine these two storms together, I would just really like us to be successful. I want our families to feel like we saw it, we knew it was maybe going to come, and we were well prepared so that we don't have a panic. I don't want to have a panic. I want our kids to feel safe. I want our families to feel safe. And so that's what I got. And I don't know if we have data to support what happens, year upon year with regard to the first month of school, but that would be curious data to look at if we have it.
We can look at attendance data for staff and attendance data for students.
So it is 5:05, and we still have a long ways to go on this agenda. This is an important conversation that I feel we've had to engage in. I would ask if there is anyone on the committee who has reservations or who are not in support of having Angela spend the next 24, 48 hours diving a little bit deeper into the survey results. And based on that information and based on this conversation, really look at going to the school board Thursday night and potentially requesting that we start the year in yellow in a hybrid model for a very finite period of time, whether that be, I would say 3 to 4 weeks. Is anyone in opposition to that idea?
So Pat, this is Dean.
Hi, Dean.
So I'm not in opposition to it. My only concern is the shorter amount of time that we go with the hybrid. If we go yellow, there's going to be a tremendous amount of work need to be put in by staff to come up with this, because this is obviously new. And if you tell folks, listen, I need you to put all this work in, but we're only going to do it for 2, 3, for a short amount of time, and then you're going to go back to green, which really isn't going to be normal learning as well. If we still have a large number of students, sounds like could be anywhere between 10 and 20% perhaps that we're dealing with remotely. I mean, the parameters, it's hard without all the information, but I think you're asking a lot of staff to as well. And I understand this parental side as well, to put a lot of work into going into hybrid and then quickly getting out of hybrid, going to something else that's going to be new, and move on from there. So that's my concern, with the short amount of time. I do agree, perhaps yellow is the best way to go. So
okay.
Pat, can I say something?
Yes, Alicia.
So I just want to voice my concern as well, similar to Veronica's. I worry about the students that were not able, all students that weren't able to access their education since March, and I'm wondering, and I'm hopeful that if we do plan on starting with a hybrid model, if we could really look carefully at those students and maybe prioritize students that weren't able to access and have those students attend full-time.
And just because we are publicly viewing this, I want to just put out there that the core instruction team has looked at that left, right, and sideways. And as much as we want to do that, and we've asked the administrators to look at who are their highest risk population, not names, just numbers, for us to better understand if that's possible. The moment we have that group of students, it's a third cohort, they automatically now mix cohorts. They're on the bus together across cohorts, they're in buildings together across cohorts, we're potentially staff mixing, and that defeats the purpose. And I know that I personally believe in the statement that Alicia just made. I have yet to find a way that we can do it safely, even when we tried looking at satellite locations. Which then we have a little bit of an issue about extracting students from one educational environment and putting them in an isolated educational environment for their safety, but to enable them to have 5 days of learning. That's another whole set of legal requirements that we need to be looking at carefully. And then we would need to have separate busing measures available. And so again, it's not that I do support that notion. And we would have to have very clear guidelines on who qualifies for that. But again, if we're following the guidelines that we have before us, the whole idea is to reduce numbers and isolate groups of students. I'm not sure how we're achieving that. However, I am always open to suggestions and working with the full team, not me making this decision myself, to continue to pursue that thread.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, but just to kind of, I'm not, pushing back and trying to be difficult, but we may be obligated to provide 5-day-a-week instruction if the building, or at least 4-day-a-week instruction if the building is physically open for 4 days a week. There may not be any way around that.
Okay, we'll have to figure that out. Karen, you were next.
Yes, thank you. So I'm most concerned about my school with the young learners. So to start, I mean, if we're going remote for a majority of the week, the youngest children there are not ready for remote learning. They're not. I mean, you're spending the first couple of weeks just getting into some routines of learning each other's names and learning how to sit on a sit spot and line up safely and all of that. So I'm really concerned about the remote learning piece for the 4-year-olds through 2nd graders. The other thing I have a concern about is pre-K. So they don't typically come on Fridays. So there wouldn't be a cohort that would be equal. So Monday, Tuesday, you'd have one cohort. Thursday, Friday, you have the other cohort. The second cohort would only get 1 day. So I'm a little concerned about that too. I don't know what we would do to remedy that. Those are my 2 thoughts.
Great, thank you. Molly?
I was just, when Alicia was speaking about the requirement, is there any way to accommodate it if, and this is very bold and just a brainstorming idea, but if it were some kind of half day, and I guess that would mean half days for all students, and so does that, I don't know, help me think through this.
I mean, we could certainly look at that. It would be better than the alternative, but we'd really need to be careful with our LRE percentage, which is the percentage of disabled students with their non-disabled peers. So we would need to take that into account. Yeah. I will say, like Angela said, there's not going to be any one plan. that is 100% right. I just want to make sure that legally we are doing everything that we need to do and everything that we should be doing, for our students, not just because we're bound to do it. But that would be something to explore, certainly. But I think we would still get into the transportation piece, is what it sounds like. Yeah.
And then my second comment is kind of back toward what Veronica was saying about wanting a shorter time frame than a month. But I also hear what Becky's saying of, or even Dean saying 2 weeks is too soon to expect a change for the teachers, for the students, all of that. Is there any way, I'm assuming the Department of Education is going to continue their 2-week analysis. And so can we just join, just announcing an assessment? And it might be that in 2 weeks, we're anticipating that 2 weeks later, we're going to try green, based on today's statistics, or just kind of trying to announce it. But I agree that we should be starting in yellow and working toward green, rather than the excitement of starting green or the stress of starting green and finding the relief of yellow. But I think starting yellow and moving toward green is a better approach. But if we could just cycle the information, every 2 weeks along with the Department of Education or on our own schedule.
I just personally, I want to make decisions that will last for longer, that will be in place for longer than a couple weeks for families, for planning purposes, if at all possible. Understanding that based upon the transmission that occurs in our region, we may have to change on the dime. But I know families are really trying to prepare for the start of school, and I'd like to, as much as we're able, to give them that long view of 2 or 3 weeks, a month, whatever that magic number is, that we would be operating in yellow, and then from that point forward, we'll be operating in green unless our designation for this particular area changes from green to another color. That's me. Other thoughts, Molly?
I was just going to ask, because I believe it was my understanding that you can make a choice at the beginning of the school year, but per term you were allowing families to kind of make a change. So if we're anticipating starting in yellow and hey, by the second term we're going to be green, but a majority of the students then want to return, is that because we're basing it on only 70% attending initially, and so we can go green when it's still 70%, or when everyone changes their mind that second term, are we even able to go green?
So the make a decision by term was for the folks that want to engage in the online learning space solely. So that way we didn't have children coming in for 3 days and then saying they're going to do online for 2 weeks and then coming back for 4 weeks and then going back online, because it'll be the same curriculum, but it will be parallel structures. It's not necessarily a live feed instruction into every classroom based on our capacity. That's going to look a little different at each grade span, how that will play out. So that's why we were looking for stability for families to say, okay, the first term, if that's trimester for elementary or quarter for middle school or semester for high school, I'll engage in my coursework in this online space. And then dependent upon what the state says for our color coding system and where the school is at operationally, I can then opt my child into in-school learning if I feel like I'm comfortable and safe with that. But I don't know that the state designation and the school designation coincide. They're really two parallel structures running.
Right.
And we're trying to create learning communities in each.
I think I meant our district decision to move. If our students in school are capable of moving to a green and going in school full time, but you change the term and someone decides to move to in-school for the next term, can we still accommodate all of the students? Am I confused?
Yeah, I think it's the word term. So when I say term for remote learning, that's based on quarter, trimester, or semester. And when we're talking about going from yellow to green for a short term, we mean more like a period of time. And so if we're yellow and we move to green,
and at the end of a quarter,
in person for that yellow spot of time, we'll then move to in person for that green spot for the green designation. And we'd rather that the people online stay online for a full term, for a full working period.
Right.
But I think I hear Molly saying, so what happens when that term comes to an end and they decide to go from remote learning to in-classroom instruction? So if we have 20% of our student body participating in remote learning, and then 10% of them decide to move to in-person, can we accommodate those additional 10% of the student body based on our need to follow those 6 CDC guidelines?
I get it. So if we're yellow,
Thank you.
If we're yellow as a school system, we most certainly can. And if we're green, this is buying us time to get us to the place where we can, because that may also change for some of our staff who are starting, may not be in person right away, but might be able to transition. And that will buy us some time to coordinate that in hopes that we can eventually have 100% of our students in person and still be following the green guidelines.
Nate had a question.
Thanks, Pat. If we do return to school in some sort of hybrid model, where we're taking a day off from school per week or 2 days or whatever that might look like, is there any objection to having athletics on those days that we aren't in school?
So in the hybrid model, the only day that we wouldn't have instruction, but we will still hold office hours for learning support would be on a Wednesday each week.
Right, and that's the day I heard. But I just want to make sure that everybody's okay with having athletics on those days that we don't have in-school instruction.
So for the moment, I have no concerns with there being students practicing and having games for athletics, with the understanding that most of the time is spent outside. The Wednesday, in addition to having that day available for teachers to do preparation, to be available for students, it's also a deep clean of the building, because we want to make sure that between cohort A and cohort B, we thoroughly clean all of our buildings. So if we're doing that thorough cleaning, having the athletes in the building will, one, prevent us from being able to complete that thorough cleaning, and it will contaminate the cleaning that was completed. So we could have the cross-contamination between the cohorts. So that's something that we'll have to look at moving forward.
Okay. And the only space that would be needed in the building is volleyball, so the gym and that lobby area.
Okay. All right. So that's a conversation moving forward, but initially, yeah. Okay.
Good, thanks.
So I'm looking at 5:20, and I'm feeling real pressure to get through more of this agenda. So why don't we leave it at this? Is we're going to spend more time analyzing the data. The building administrators will be looking at their data. Angela is going to be looking at her data. We will be having some additional conversations, and we will kind of, as a collective group, an administrative group, we will be bringing forth that recommendation to the school board, whatever that recommendation is going to be, and that we're going to use your feedback from this particular meeting to also guide the recommendation that we bring forward to the board on Thursday night. I think that's kind of the best that we can do given the current situation, the current amount of information we have available to us. Does that make sense?
Yep. So
Okay.
I have
Go
one
ahead.
quick agenda item, and it's actually Terry, you'll be up. So the facilities and operation group is looking at protocols, but as a result of one of them being technology, we were pursuing a piece of technology that can support monitoring the health and safety data following HIPAA and FERPA and all the guidelines. The school nurses have had a chance to be part of this conversation, so I'm going to leave it to Terry to just very briefly present her suggestion for a license that we would like to procure through Frontline Central, which is a software license we already have for other purposes.
So I just walked away. I don't know if you called on me or not. Sorry.
Did.
I just switched offices. I'm live streaming from the other. So Angela, what am I supposed to respond to?
Please briefly make your proposal for the Frontline Central extra license for the nurses.
The Frontline Central, we met with the nurses and they really liked the Frontline Central because it really gives them an app for temperature checks, and it gives them an easy way for reporting of who has and hasn't checked in for the day. It also was a lot more comprehensive than the system they've been using, and so they really would like to have the Frontline Central.
And it also, it connects to PowerSchool, right? It syncs with PowerSchool?
PowerSchool syncs with that every night. So the student information that comes from PowerSchool would sync into Frontline, and so it would be there, whereas normally that's not something that probably would happen. The nurses we don't want them putting the information in every night.
And one of the pieces of feedback that we're getting from families is how is it that we're monitoring the data? What will happen when someone ends up with COVID-19? How do we ensure that we maintain their privacy, but also effectively secure the safety of all of our staff or students who may have been in contact? And this software provides us some nurse level data, some information where they're moving through the proper steps and protocols, and then it elevates what's allowed to be seen by the administration to kind of give us some data metrics per school and across the district, and even quarantine dates, the tracking measures of 14-day monitoring that the nurses can keep track of without compromising an individual's rights to privacy. And so we can feel more confident in our ability to monitor and assess the situation, and be transparent with our community without violating someone's individual privacy.
There are some schools that are using Google spreadsheets to keep track, but then somebody has to manipulate the data and compare it and contrast it, whereas this Frontline is more of a real-time who's done what.
And the cost?
It wasn't very much. Do you know what?
Yeah, it's $4,000 annually and a $2,000 setup fee. And we explained to the nurses that we could not guarantee a renewal the following year until we had a chance to go through the budget process and understand and ensure that they continue to see value in it as we move through this year's process. Mm-hmm. Mary?
Is this for the self-assessment piece that teachers would put in and then parents would put something in?
There is that feature and that option. The protocol for that is not yet determined. Staff may have more of an active role in reporting their self-assessment, but families need to move through those series of questions that the CDC is providing us. But whether or not they have to report every single day to us is a different story. They need to report if any one of those measures turn up with a yes, like a high fever or an answer of yes. But if they all report out at no, that's a decision for another group, one of these committees that I think Dave is partly responsible for, to make some of those protocol decisions. It has the ability to do that if we need to.
Okay.
So I guess what we're looking for is there agreement that we can secure $6,000, including implementation, with a $4,000 annual renewal? We're not agreeing to the renewal yet. We're just clarifying what the cost measures are.
I see lots of thumbs. I
Thank
can't
you.
see everyone's face, so I would say, is there anyone who is opposed to it?
This is Michelle. I agree with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle.
And core instruction is done.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Katie, communications.
Yep, I've got a short update for everybody today. All of our committee notes from all of the subcommittees as part of this Return to School Steering Committee have been posted to our website. Michael Johnson has been busy making sure that that's all current. We decided at last week's meeting that we're going to publish weekly non-essential updates. For example, the mask video that we created and you approved. We're going to update those weekly. On Tuesdays will be our posting day. We have an additional document that we're sharing among committee members, just outlining upcoming projects, and we're breaking off and assigning or signing up to tackle those projects, including gathering links to be posted on our resources page, the shaping of a frequently asked questions page, and videos to be filmed. So I could share with you that project list, but in the interest of time, that is in a nutshell our work over the past week as communications committee.
And Katie, when do you hope to have the frequently asked questions sheet released to families or available on our website?
That I hadn't determined yet.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, in part, again, Pat, because of the challenge of wanting to, one, capture the questions that people really have. Everything's kind of a question right now. And two, making sure that we have an answer that's going to stay the same in the long term. I think we're closer than we've ever been for some of those questions. Is the appropriate process then to get the approval of that frequently asked question page by this committee? Or is that something that can happen at the administrative level with feedback?
I think that's something that can happen at the administrative level.
Okay.
Because that's where a lot of the decisions and protocols are being made and developed right now. And so given the urgency of getting this information out, I don't want to always have to wait for a meeting. So Karen.
Katie, when you do that, I know sometimes when I look at frequently asked questions, it just seems very random. Like you have this question and then if someone's really looking for a specific answer, if you could categorize that and maybe even put the link to what that protocol really is. For example, when we decide what the protocols will be if a child comes to school with some symptoms. So what, the question is, how long does my child have to stay out of school? Then maybe there's a link that directly takes that family member to something in our website. Just a thought, but if it can be organized based on, mask questions and bus questions.
And I will kind of jump to the bottom of the agenda just for a minute because of this conversation. Today I received a template for a student handbook. Administratively, with staff, with our nurses, we should begin taking a look at that handbook, updating it to make it fit our district, and then releasing that to families as soon as possible. And it will need to make sure that it's in line with many of those frequently asked questions. But as soon as we can put that in the hands of families, I think that will help them. It will help guide their decision making as well if they know exactly what protocols are going to be in place, whether they have a child who is not feeling well, guidelines regarding wearing masks, breaks, all of that. I'm also wondering, Katie, another idea is that possibility of doing a video that either I or Angela and I together doing a video after the board meeting on Thursday so that we can present to the public what the plan means, what it looks like, rather than having it just be a written communication. For many families, they may prefer watching a video.
That would be great. You're actually on our list. We were saving you for getting a little bit closer to the start. So you let us know your timeline and we'll have a crew sent to you to make that video happen.
Okay, we'll have a conversation about that following Thursday's board meeting.
Got it.
Okay. Karen has also asked whether another survey will be sent to parents who are undecided after more protocols are decided. I haven't had that conversation with Angela. I'm not sure whether we will send out another one or not, or whether we will ask individual schools to kind of reach out to some of their parents. I'm not sure how reasonable that is, depending on the number of families that need to be contact needs to be made with. But okay, anything else with communications then? All right, then food service, Jared.
Real quick update for everybody. You folks had some great questions last week that I was able to bring back to Linda. I know that one of the concerns that was raised was around asking families to pick up too many times during the week. And Linda and I were able to chat today about what it could look like if we were not asking, to pick up food each day, but if we were going to go back to something like a couple days a week picking up like we did in the spring. I wasn't able to really connect with her until today. We were both in and out, but she was able to share with me before this meeting some initial thoughts where she can envision a situation where we could put together food to be picked up for cohort A, for example, the kids who might, and talking in a hybrid situation, kids who would be in the buildings on Monday, Tuesday, could possibly get their meal, very like picking up early on Monday, so they'd have food for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with another group picking up on Wednesday, so they'd have their food for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It will depend on timing. It will depend on availability of hours and availability of staff, but she does think it's possible where we could, especially using Wednesday as a day to do a lot of the prep work. If we aren't going to be feeding kids in the building in our hybrid scenario. Basically, I think she sees a way to get the work done where we can feed the kids on the days they're in the building and have 2 pickups and packaging food that can be picked up and sent home. We have more work to do. I asked her to lay out, very detailed, like what she would need to have to make that happen, whether it's I'm going to need X number of people in this building and I'm going to need this amount of time and I'm going to need some place to store the food to keep it cool if I don't have enough space. So she's working on that right now. And then the next step is a similar list for what it would look like if we were going to deliver meals. I know Pat asked about delivering meals. And I think, again, I still feel like in a remote learning situation, that's more feasible, but she's going to lay out what it would look like. Her biggest concern with delivering is how are we going to ensure that the food stays safe for consumption? Getting it dropped off. Are their parents going to be home? Are they going to put it somewhere? How are the drivers going to move the food and keep it warm? If we go that way, or do we go with cold meals, in which case, how are we going to keep the milk cold? So Linda's working on that as well. But I do want you to know we did hear the feedback about reducing the number of days, and I think it'll be plausible to get it down to maybe 2 days like we had in the spring, understanding we're having to feed both cohorts and some cohorts for the same days. So we're working on that, and we'll have more of an update, I hope, a little bit later in the week for what that would look like specifically.
Thank you, Jared. Jared, I spoke with Linda today, and we had a brief conversation on warming cabinets. Last week I thought you had mentioned that you had already purchased or placed an order for those cabinets. She said no. Is that something that you guys are working on or working with Karen's team to purchase?
I said that we had already purchased it, I misspoke, and I apologize. What I meant to convey was that I had added it to our list for the resource committee, and I know Karen had been emailing back and forth with Linda today, and I think she's got some priced out at the food service place in, I think it's in Manchester, or maybe in Winthrop. But I will completely own the part where I didn't look at that exchange between Karen and Linda super close. I know that we're putting them on the spreadsheet, but they haven't been purchased yet.
Okay. I just, if we're going to open our doors in a month, we need to begin submitting some of these, purchasing some of these items. If all school districts are in this, they were all in the same in situation that we're in, and if they're all placing those orders, we're going to have to get in line. And I'd rather be in the front of that line versus at the end.
Okay, so I will, she's basically, the last email I saw was Linda asking, if we're able to get these, can we order them? And I'm going to say that if you can get them, we should order them.
Yes, thank you.
Sure thing.
Karen?
So I had sent and put a ton of different websites that I had spent quite a lot of time last week just researching some. Most of what I could only find were like the tabletop ones, and she's looking for the ones on wheels and ones that are a little bit bigger that she could actually use after the pandemic is over. I did not get anything from her today. I didn't see anything after that. She just gave me a name of a company like Barricadus or something like that. So it is on this action page that I am going to do when it comes to my turn, but I'd love to be able to make an action on it now. So if we're okay to just say yes, as soon as we find out the company and the amount that she has permission to start ordering them. I think she was looking at one per school.
Is anyone on the committee opposed to them submitting an invoice and getting those ordered? No? Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll let her know right now, and we'll get it going. Thank you for your patience.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, Gabe, transportation and facilities.
All right, so I'm just going to start off with facilities. So I met last week with Siemens, and I had briefly, I believe, mentioned at our last meeting about meeting with them about ventilation and also the O2 Prime system that we could put into our systems. So on the ventilation end, so really we're looking at, let's start with kind of like phase one. And the phase one is minimal cost to the district. It's basically getting a complete comprehensive survey of our ventilation system and making sure that everything is working 100% and that we're ventilating all of the areas properly. And so they're going to start working through this week, the schools, and getting that process done to give us a report. And then from that report, we would know if we have, any trouble areas in the system, and if we are able to quickly fix the trouble areas, and the areas that are working, can we bump those areas up and ventilate more in those areas just with automation, running them longer, which will cost us a little bit in the long run just for energy usage, but our small cost to the district that way. So that's kind of phase one, is to get a complete scope of what we have and make sure it's running properly. And by doing that, we'll get the information to be able to have Siemens give us a comprehensive plan on the O2 Prime system that they could install into the ductwork. So each point of use device, so whether it's a heat ventilation unit or a cabinet unit that's in a classroom, unit ventilator, there would be a separate system for each one of those in the school. So there's quite a few ventilators in the school, so that means there's quite a few of these units that would be put in. And with that said, it can be pretty costly. So before we jump to anything, I wanted to make sure we get a price on it and to see what we're really looking for a cost. They threw out a couple figures, but without knowing exactly how many units we have, I don't even dare to ballpark anything. So the system, the way they explained it, the system works by sending out charged particles into the air, and those particles attach to bacteria and pathogens, which are easily captured in the filters that we would have in the ventilation system. So that's pretty much the system in a nutshell. So it basically takes it out of the air through the system. So it works as kind of like a sanitizing device is what it works as.
Gabe?
Yep.
You said that they're starting this week to do a comprehensive assessment. They
Yep.
should be pretty familiar with our HVAC system because they maintain the system. So I can't imagine it's going to take them too long to provide us with an assessment. But have they given you a date as to when they will have a document in your hands?
They were really hoping to have everything done by the end of the week.
Okay.
That's their hope, is to have it all done. And some of this work can be done off-site remotely because they can log into our system, and by doing that, they can be able to look at the systems that are there and look at each of the systems as a point, and the point will tell it where it's at for percentage-wise for CFMs, that sort of portion of it. So they may not even have to come on site to do all of it. Just a matter of having their tech log in and look through the system that way. And they're thinking they may be able to just easily run a report and get the information they need. Even though they've done so much work in our system when they did the energy upgrades, there's still portions of it that they didn't necessarily look at when they did the energy upgrades because it wasn't there wasn't a cost savings in it. So by doing this way, they'll look at everything as a envelope, one big package. But they're hoping by the end of the week they would have the information back, and I'm giving them some information from each of the schools. They've had the custodians gather, so to try to expedite this, to give it to Siemens that way, just to hopefully hurry the process up. I know we're in crunch time, definitely.
Thank you.
There's another product that Pat brought to my attention, I believe it was Thursday last week, and this is a product called OmniShield. So she learned about it through a meeting that she had with the superintendents. So this product here, it's a antimicrobial spray. The information I received today, I can get it. It's right through Maine Paper, which is a distributor right here in Maine. It is not inexpensive. It can be sprayed on the surface with our regular sprayers that we have. So basically what it does is it's sprayed on, it dries on the surfaces, any touch surface, and it creates a barrier that the bacteria cannot attach to. So it's a shield on all the surfaces. So basically, if you can envision, somebody's dirty hand touches the knob, and instead of staying on the knob, it's basically sloughed off. It'll fall off, basically. One thing I did find, it doesn't mean we shouldn't clean. We still can do our cleaning, our disinfecting, but it's another barrier and another shield that's on the surfaces to help with the transmission of these bacteria pathogens from surface contacts. And so it lasts, they're saying 60 to 90 days. I did receive just today some information on the studies that they've done at some hospitals, and also kind of a spreadsheet of exactly how it works. It is confusing, but it's like your soaps. The soaps are bacterial, so this is on a microbial level that's on the surface. So per school, we would need at least a case of this product. It's about $1,400 per case. But if you look at it square foot wise, it's less than a penny per square foot. If you look at the use, and it does last 60 to 90 days. A lot of school districts are really looking to do this, especially even in the hybrid situation, that day in between that we need to do a deep cleaning. This would help us out when the students are in school on those days. we wouldn't have to do as much as a heavy deep cleaning as we will be doing on Wednesdays. It's another safety precaution for students and staff that are in the buildings, definitely. And to me, it looks like this is a good first step with the ventilation, and a product like this as another barrier instead of going the full-blown $1 million project, which we don't have that in our back pockets. Yep. I think this is a good product to start with, to go with, for safety of all of us, definitely.
So if there's a case per building, we have 6 buildings, that's $8,400. And what, another one for the central office? So are we talking about $10,000 basically?
Yeah, it's central office, and also for the buses. We can do
Transportation.
buses. They did say because it does wear off. The more touching you do, it wears off. So they said if it's on the seats, in and out of the seats, it may wear a little bit longer. But I think a case for the buses, we'd be able to get at least 2 applications out of all the buses. So another case for the bus office would, I think, be perfect. Yep.
Karen?
Just a quick question. So if we don't stay in hybrid, when would you see this being able to be done? Like on a Friday for the weekend? Like when would that happen?
Yeah, it could be done as it goes through the same sprayers we have. They said it dries very quickly, so it can be applied very, very, very fast. It's best to go through the Victory sprayers that we have that gives the product an electric charge, so that way it attaches right to the surface. Instead of just a regular sprayer where you might not be giving a good coverage of everything. But yeah, this could be done on a Friday, late in the day after all staff is gone, and it dries within, I think they had mentioned it dries within 30 minutes. And then as soon as it's dry, it's effective. Yep.
Okay, I'm looking at equipment or questions. Let's see, will the next hand touching it pick it up? So if you use it on the doorknob, on the door handle, and one student quickly grabs the door handle, walks away, another student grabs the door handle, will they be impacted by that?
Right. So it helps with, that's what it helps with the transmission of any bacteria on the surfaces. So again, I just got the information today. I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I did have a phone call with Main Paper also. They did stress that this does not take the place of sanitizing or cleaning. We still need to clean because the dirt on the surface is what the bacteria lives off. So if there is some dirt on the surface, it still can live on there. But this product helps it to not stick to the surface. So it's a barrier that's there. So
we could use it on the playground equipment as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Correct?
Use on the playground equipment. And I think what it really needs to be looked at is it lengthens, I guess, that time frame with, say, like the playground equipment. We may not have to go and do a deep clean as often of those items.
Right.
So if that's the case, especially in a hybrid, we're 2 days in with students. It gives us a good 2-day window that we don't have to worry about following somebody around and disinfecting behind them constantly all the time. And that's a real struggle. We can use it on all bathroom products. Did say in there, it is food safe, and it's EPA registered. So it's not just a product that is not registered by the federal government. And it is, like I said, it is food safe to be used in a kitchen environment also.
Okay, I'm also see a comment from Veronica. She says that they're talking about using that at her school as well. So I think that there are a number of school districts that are looking at this option, and she recommends that we just get it.
Yep.
I'm not opposed to get it. It's a lot of money. But as we think about the staffing levels that we need to do the deep cleaning, this may help us, as you said, on the days in which we have students in school, that we don't have to have the deep cleaning to the same degree that we'll have to on on Wednesday. So that would be helpful. Is anyone opposed to us moving forward in purchasing this item? Okay, I don't see any objections. So
Okay.
moving us along, it is now 5:52, Gabe.
I can end right there if you want.
Was there anything else that we need to know?
Well, I
Or
mean,
you feel we should need to know?
really, that was my piece for the facilities. I just need to say that we definitely there's a crunch on ordering products and items, which I'm sure Karen can attest to and talk to. We really need to get started on items that we need to order, or at least put our names down for them. One other piece with the schools, if we do need to store items, we don't have much storage at each of the schools. And if the thought is to make as much room as we can for the students that are coming in the classrooms, in any part of the school, we need to have some additional storage. So we really need to get an okay if we can order some storage units to be placed at the schools. The high school especially, we need to move out a whole drama room to get a holding room made, and that's half a storage unit right there. So, and there's not much room in the schools to store any of these items.
So are you thinking like one of those moving pods, that type of thing?
Yeah, similar to a moving pod. It would be that, which those are really expensive, the pod ones. But I would be looking for a shipping container unit. I've looked into them. They're watertight. The snow's not going to hurt them. So the items that are in there are safe. They can be locked, so we can make sure they're padlocked so nobody can break into them. And they're not overly expensive per month. We just do a monthly rental. So as soon as we don't need them, they come and pick them up. They're roughly, I've called around a couple places, $125 to $150 a month for a 40-foot unit. A 40-foot unit at, say, the high school, one at the middle school, and then potentially just some smaller ones at the elementary schools if needed. A couple elementary schools have new sheds. They might be able to store some stuff in there, but I'm worried we're not going to have enough room to store items, not just tables or chairs or file cabinets, but teacher items if we need to store some of their stuff in there too.
I'm completely in support. We need to have some space available for our staff. We need to get the rooms cleaned out. If we have any hope of having more than 8 to 9 students, 10 students in the classroom to adhere to the social distancing or the physical distancing, we need to have a place for staff to be able to store safely some of the items from their classroom plus some of these other places. So anyone opposed to us ordering those now? And I know that Gabe will be working with town officials, fire marshals to determine the appropriate location. So yeah.
Perfect.
All
And
right.
that rolls right into my last piece.
Okay.
Talked to the fire marshals today about the tents. There's been a lot of talk about tents. And so spoke to them at great lengths today. And tents, they cannot have the side curtains on them. As soon as they put side curtains, we have to abide by all health and safety requirements for egress, any of those items. So without the sides, they are just a temporary structure that's there, a canopy structure, I guess, if you want to call it. So we do not have to abide by any of the regulations that come along with it. They don't need to be inspected. The one thing that they said, they do need to have the proper certifications for fire retardant on them. The fire marshal said there should be a tag right on the tent itself that the company should be able to get us to make sure they are listed. UL listed is what they had mentioned. So if we really are moving forward and wanting to get these tents, that's another piece that we would need to know, if we can get them. And these tents that we're looking at are a 20 by 40 tent. They do not have the center poles in them. They just have the poles on the outside. So it's one open room. that we'd be looking at. So it's all usable, so you don't have to worry about 2 posts in the middle of them.
And
Okay.
we're looking for those tents for like mass breaks, maybe phys ed classes to be able to be out there. So if it's a drizzly day or, just being able to get outside, because if we may be using our gym could be for lunch.
So Karen, how many tents are your committee looking at, and what's the cost per tent?
Okay, so it's a monthly charge, and it's out of a company in Auburn. Hang on a second, let me go find we were looking at 6, one per building. And hang on a second. Just going to sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. That's why I have to go to the others. Almost there. So, oops, it wasn't in this one. Hang on, sorry, in my binder.
Karen, do you want me to move on to something else and then come back to you?
Nope, I just got to the email, so I'm right here again.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought I was on the other one and it wasn't. So Jason sent me his email, and I think we're gonna have to look. Go ahead, Pat. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to get back to you. I can't find it right as fast as I want to.
Okay, so we'll come back to resources in just a minute. I just wanted to update you briefly on our CRF funding. As a reminder, we have 1.6 million or a little bit over 1.6 million available, but the bulk of that money, just so we're aware, is probably going to the ventilation system and to technology. I wouldn't be surprised between just those 2 items that we're looking at close to $1 million. So while $1.6 million seems like a lot, we're going to eat through it really quickly. I'm going to be recommending to the board on Thursday night that we also look at our staffing. One, I think I mentioned to you last week that I'd like to hire a coordinator. Looking at calling the person or the position like a pandemic response coordinator. So we're working on a job description right now, and that individual would ultimately be responsible for helping us really oversee the work that we're doing. They would help manage the oversight of these committees. They would help monitor the health guidance from the Department of Education, CDC. They would support in the development of some of the protocols, some of the work that we're doing. They would help us oversee the funds to make sure that we're staying within the allowable resources that we have available. They would help with the internal coordination, probably help with some of our training as well and support our nurses. So I'm proposing that to the board. We're also proposing an elementary nurse so that every single building will have a nurse. And I'm looking at recommending a COVID-19 permanent substitute so that each building will have some permanent subs. So not knowing what our staffing situation is going to be, we're being recommended that if anyone is sick, they are to stay home. So I expect an increase in the number of staff who are going to be out. So by having some permanent subs right on site and available, I think that will help the administrators to be able to cover the classrooms. I don't yet know how many I'm going to recommend. The number that I recommend will look different for the high school than for, say, Karen's school, based upon the size of the building, the population of students, and the number of staff. Also looking at maybe having some relief substitutes. And so these would be individuals who would also help in greeting students as they enter the building, help give us some additional bodies for supervision during lunch. We're still going to be limited to having no more than 50 students in a space at any one time. So we have to adhere to the 6-foot distancing because they're going to have their face masks off when they eat. So we're going to have additional bodies. So I will be making that recommendation to the board this week. And I just wanted to make sure that I shared that with you. And if you had any concerns or any feedback, to give you the opportunity to provide that to me. No?
I will weigh in. I think
Okay.
it's a grand plan, and that everyone is working so hard and is staying so focused on this, but we're also trying to move forward with all the other responsibilities that we have to operate a school system under normal circumstances. And I'm just very afraid that we are going to something's going to get missed. And by having someone dedicated to this, we'll really have someone who both has a health guidelines and background understanding, knowledge, and can communicate effectively with our administrators and school nurses, but can also help us kind of be a project manager and ensure that we continue to make progress going forward. I think it's a much more efficient way to meet the expectations our community has for us in operating a school under these conditions.
Thank you, Angela.
I did type in the amounts for the tents. So it's $2,300 roughly a month to rent one. So it's $41,000 through the month of November. And Chad just sent me a message saying he would need more than one tent.
Given the size of his school, he would need more than one, but I don't know what more than one means. Does that mean 2? Does it mean 5? That's a lot of money. But we need, I strongly feel like we need tents. We need those spaces outside of the school building so that we can have a dry, safe place for our students to go to for those mask breaks, for lunch, for outdoor classrooms.
So Karen, if I calculate this right, based on what you said, the purchase price was as well, it's $41,850 for 3 months, 6 tents. Chad says we need more because of the size of his student population and such. Totally fair. But just for 6 tents, if we purchase them based on your purchase price, it's only $6,000 more. And then as needs change, we can move them from one building to another if one building needs them more than others. Is that accurate? Or if the spring comes and we need them again, we can just pull them out and use them as opposed to another $40,000 for renting?
Yeah, I didn't even look at purchasing. I was only thinking through November. So,
well, you put the purchase price in there, so I calculated it.
That's great. No, I think it's a great idea, except again, storage through the winter months.
Yep, I don't know anything about that.
And I also don't know about setup. So if we purchase them, I'd have to find out if they're still willing to come in and set them up for us, because I don't know if the custodial staff can just set them up. They do have really big stakes, so it's 42-inch stakes that hold these into the ground, and so they're pretty massive.
Yeah, I think somebody would have to be certified to set these units up. I don't believe we're going to be able to. I haven't seen the specs on them, but it sounds like these stakes need to be driven into the ground. Wherever they are, we'll have to make sure dig safe is called because of the stakes they're putting in the ground. Make sure there's no underground utilities. So these types aren't your, pop-up tent with the post in the middle. So that could be some of the reason, for this issue. I will say one more thing. Jim Lothridge, he mentioned that he has maybe some contact or used to do tents. So he's on my committee for the facilities. So I'll touch base with him again too. He mentioned one of the last meetings about tents, but we didn't really go too far with the conversation. So I'll touch base with him and see if he has a contact that might be able to help us out to get something a little cheaper.
So I think this is worthy of exploring a bit further. I agree with Angela for a difference of $6,000. If possible, it makes sense to purchase them so that we then have them available to us in the spring should we need them. And then when a time comes and we don't need them anymore, then we can sell them if we wish and recoup some of our money. Okay, Karen, anything else? Oh, sorry, Becky?
So I don't know how anybody feels about this, and I have no idea about the quality, but Amazon sells these tents, 20 by 40 tents, and they say they're heavy duty carport tents with removable sides or roll up sides for $2,198 per tent. I don't know if it's worthy of investigating, but.
Okay.
So we'll look into a little bit more, but I do want to say too that again, time is of essence here because as I spoke to Jason from this company, you got a lot of schools who have the same idea and they're all ordering. So if it'd be great if we could have approval up to it, maybe a certain amount to be thinking about or to go forward. If we can hit this price or less, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would like to see a decision made by the end of this week to put that request in. So if we could do a little more investigation, Karen, and share that information with me. One thing that we can do, given the amount of money that we're talking about, I could distribute that to committee members and just have committee members respond back yay or nay. As a way of kind of facilitating this and moving this along as quickly as possible. Does that make sense? Are people okay with that? Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Great, thank you. All right. Then Karen, what else do you have? We're at 6:10 now. You're on mute, Karen.
All right, so I would like to be able to share my screen because there's been a lot of movement from the list that we had over to the list of to-do items like running items, and I'd really like to be able to get some decisions on a few other things. So let me just share the screen real quick. I'll go as fast as I can. That's the hard part about being last. Okay, so I'm gonna move over. All right. So these are the spreadsheets that we're doing as a running list. So we have
Karen, we can't see that. Can you make that larger, please?
Yep. Is that better?
That's better for me. I can see it now. Thank you.
I'll go a little bit. Oh yeah. Okay. So one of the things that are on here, so Terry, something about technology got added on here. So Terry, if you're able to speak to the first item that you put on here.
So we have 3 different scenarios for technology. One of the things that was really important in the instructional was that classrooms really wanted to make sure that remote and in-school kids had access to seeing one another so that they could still feel like they were all part of the community. Our projectors are pretty old. We bought them during the Obama era, which was somewhere around, I think, maybe 2010. And so some of the equipment that we want to connect to those projectors won't connect to the projector. And also some of the projectors are really, not in great shape and need to be replaced. So one of the things we'd really like to do is and I'm going to put it in a synopsis here. We really would like to put 145 short throw projectors in. We looked at just replacing the projectors that we had connected to the ceiling, but because a lot of the projectors are out of stock right now, the only projector that we could get was a $1,400 projector plus everything else. And so we decided that it would make sense to put 145 short throw projectors in and then 10 replacement TVs across the district. The other thing that we thought was really important is that we would have an airtime device replace our Apple TVs. And what that would do, it would allow a MacBook or a Chromebook to connect to the projector so that kids and teachers could display what was going on, or we could live stream from either device so that the teacher didn't have to always be stuck with their device being the projector. Angela really wanted to have 10 owls. And what an owl is it's basically for a conference room, and it follows the voice of someone and the video. So if you're like in a meeting and someone talked, the owl would turn and face that person, showing them. And then the audio would go on. And if somebody else in the room started talking, the owl would turn and start videoing that person. So those would be used for meetings and like IEP meetings, conferences, stuff like that. The other thing is we did put Chromebooks in there, and we put the Chromebooks in for ed techs, and we also put Chromebooks in, one per room. All right. eCollect and Enrollment Express is from PowerSchool. What that does is it allows parents to register their students and change information online in their PowerSchool account. And then as soon as that happens, it pushes into a little waiting area where the admin assistant logs in and says, yep, that phone number looks good, pushes a button, and it imports it into PowerSchool. What that would alleviate is the admin assistant needing to get all that paper and parents to fill all the paper out. So Cami was one of the things that the teachers really wanted. It's a PDF. You can take something on your computer that looks like you can't move it around or change it. It allows them to draw on it. It's a PDF editor. Seesaw, we wanted for pre-K through 3. It's kind of like a Google Classroom for little kids. It's a little bit more user-friendly. We wanted Screencastify. A lot of teachers used Screencastify this last year because we don't have a lot of space on our laptops, and they needed to make instructional movies. So to me, Screencastify is a no-brainer. Google Enterprise, we do need Google Enterprise. Otherwise, you're limited to 100 people on each Google Meet, and there's some other limitations. So we hope that we can get the Google Enterprise. It's about $10,000. Ed Puzzle, what Ed Puzzle does is it allows you to make a video and insert like links or questions in the middle of it. Teachers really like that and requested that we had Ed Puzzle. And WeVideo usually is used by some people for video editing as well. So that is a lot of money. That's almost $500,000. I realized that when we asked for that, we may have that and we may not have that. So I would say, we have a want, a need, and a must have. The want was $500,000. The need, whereas we would say not as many projectors, not as many airtames, the EdTech Chromebooks, but not the extra Chromebook for the classrooms, that equaled $394,000. And then the absolute must have, what we did was we said, okay, who has no mounted projector whatsoever now? And we had 70 teachers that don't have a mounted projector. They're mostly in the pre-K through 3 grade level. They have an older projector, but it's on a cart. And if we're going to have these videos or the streaming of classes, we said at least we wanted the 70 of those. We took.
Terry, sorry, I just want to also add on that one. It also frees up space in our classroom for movement and desks. Right now, the projectors on a cart and the cords are making it more difficult to have the adequate spacing that we need for young learners.
Mm-hmm. We removed 6 of the owls and only left 1 in. We took about half of the airtames away. That would mean that some of the only people that would get the airtame so that the Chromebook could go on would be the people who got the mounted projector. We did keep the EdTech software, but we took the Chromebooks, but we did take the Chromebooks for the classrooms out of that. We kept all the software, and that was, and no document cameras. Teachers have really said they wanted a document camera. And the reason why we want to have a document camera is because what we hope to have is that once kids come back to school and they're in the classroom. You've got the live stream going in the corner, but now you want to show somebody, they can actually use that document camera to show the other people in the classroom or show what's on there on a piece of paper. The other thing about both document cameras that we bought, the most expensive, the more expensive, and the least expensive, was that they're both portable so that they can go home with teachers, which we thought was important.
So can I throw it out there, Terry? You know, I'm concerned about the amount of money that we're gonna need for the ventilation system. So I am looking at your needs versus your wants. And wondering if we could move for my recommendation, and I don't know how you feel about this, is to move forward with the needs immediately so that you can place these orders, get the equipment that you need. And if the ventilation system comes in and it's less than what I fear it may be, we could then go back and look at some of the other pieces of equipment that staff would really like to have to enhance their ability to provide the remote learning. Is that doable?
My question to you would be, is that the needed 394,000 or the absolutely must have?
The needed, the 394.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. You know, I think that will give us a really good start on things. We have some video cameras in there. We have some, you know, we have quite a few of the air tames. I think that'd be awesome.
I also think that coming from the core instruction committee, where there's a number of teaching staff, and they've been reaching out and connecting to other staff, that it really meets some ongoing requests that came out of our spring learning environment, that teachers, as they were trying to implement remote learning, were recognizing were really critical to do so successfully, that we're being able to be responsive, and it will be a smoother process for the families and students on their end. And then that, just to be clear, those document cameras for teachers to go home mean if we move into a remote space, or if a teacher is remote, it could go home with them, and then when they work back in the classroom, it could come back in the classroom. It's a portable device. And so I think it also meets our long-term objectives with some of the new curriculum that we're starting to implement. This will allow some facility with that over the long term. So this is not just to be responsive to a short-term need.
Otherwise, are others on board? Again, I'm trying to be really cognizant of the time. We're 20 minutes past our end time. Is there anyone, Becky, you have a comment?
I just wanted to say that I'm really, one of the things that I was thinking a while ago is that whatever way we choose to spend this money, that the superintendent and our staff is going to want to focus on sustainability. And I'm really just so grateful that that's exactly the direction that much of this is going, is to create some sustainable change and sustainability within the district to provide higher quality academics for our students going forward. I'm just really pleased that we're doing that. I think that's great.
Thank you. Anyone in opposition to us moving forward with purchasing the needs portion, that the 394,000 that Terry is recommending? Okay, I don't hear any opposition. So why don't you go ahead and do that, Terry? Place that order as soon as possible, please, so that we can have it here for the start of the school.
Awesome. Thank
Great.
you.
Karen?
Yep, so I'm moving right along. So the next one is the instruction committee had asked for hard plastic tags. So if we are in a cohort situation, the hybrid, that the kids could have these plastic tags on their backpacks, so that a bus person could see right away whether they're supposed to be cohort A or cohort B, to make sure that they're not getting on the wrong buses on the wrong days. So they were looking for 600 tags, which cost about $660 plus shipping.
And what grade level would be using these?
These would be for the elementary schools.
Okay, so 600 is enough K through 5 or pre-K through 5?
That's what they asked for.
Because we have somewhere around 900 students, 1,000 students pre-K through 5.
I think looked at pre-K to 3 numbers.
Okay, all right. I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's a creative way of helping ensure that students are attending school only when they need to. It's a quick visual. Is there anyone who is in opposition to this? Okay, great.
The next
Karen.
thing, yep. So I did some looking around for picnic tables. Those are also really hard to find because it was the resin ones that you can wipe off. I didn't want to get wooden ones that would rot as well. Tractor Supply has some. There's another, Sarah put this on here, but there was another company that Sam's Club uses as well, but those were a little bit more expensive. So I'm hoping if you're okay to move forward on some picnic tables, that'd be awesome too. These are ones that actually fold up, so we could also store them during the winter months if we don't need them outside.
How many are you thinking about purchasing?
So I don't need any at LER. We did talk about this at our ET meeting today, and people were going to kind of give me a numbers. Okay. We can wait for this one, but we can move forward, maybe next week, move forward on purchasing picnic tables.
Anyone opposed to purchasing picnic tables? Angela?
Can we say something like, we approve a dozen, and if you need more, you'll come back on Monday, like a dozen or fewer, something so that if she finds they only need 10, she can just do it and she doesn't have to wait until next Monday night.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, can I say one thing? We just need to make sure that I'm not sure how many students you're thinking of sitting on a picnic table, but they would need to be 6 feet apart. So we would need to make sure they're large enough to accommodate social distancing to 6 feet if they're going to be eating lunch on them. So I would, if they are a Tractor Supply, I'd rather run up there and just take a measurement to make sure that they are going to work before we go through and order a bunch.
Okay. The ones I was looking at were 6 feet. They were 6 feet picnic tables.
Okay. Yep. No, that's perfect. And if they have them right there, I'm sure I can run up really quick and take a measurement, and we can be for sure, and I can let you know right off.
Okay.
But that's a great question. You know, if they're 6 feet, does that mean you have one person at a picnic table? If they're having lunch, and is it worth spending that kind of money, $150 for one student to be able to sit at the picnic table?
If they're for outdoor instruction and they have their masks on and they're 3 feet apart, although I guess if they have their masks on, why would they be outdoors? Never mind.
I guess maybe we'll just talk about this a little bit further.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move further down. The tents we're going to talk about later. So the other part of the clear masks, these prices are coming from special ed. Sarah got an email from somebody that they were going to be doing usable masks for staff and some face shields. So this is coming from special ed.
Yeah, it actually it relates to many of our hearing impaired students. We need to make sure that we accommodate them. And from what I gather, what it means is that we need to provide these masks for the students who are hearing impaired, but we also have to provide them for all students in the classroom in which the student participates, and to give those students the opportunity to wear those masks so that the student who is hearing impaired has the ability to read the lips of the other students who are in the classroom, plus for staff. And so Sarah did a lot of this work in thinking about all of the students' needs across the district. And so this is what she put forth. Personally, I don't think we have a choice. We are expecting and hoping that the Department of Education is going to provide us with some clear masks that we'll be able to distribute. But I think the last time you were in their portal, Karen, that option wasn't even open, right? And so we have an immediate need for students on day one. When they're in there, we need to be able to accommodate any hearing impaired child. So I don't think we have a choice. I think we just need to go ahead and buy them. And these things are plastic, right? So they're not, or the part around the mouth is plastic. So they're not going to last forever. We have an issue with cleaning them. You can't throw them in the washing machine. So they are reusable, but they have to be cleaned by hand. We don't have enough staff right now responsible for doing that kind of cleaning on a daily basis, right? So I think we need to have multiple masks available for those students and staff throughout the week. And we'll have to put a protocol in place to make sure that they're then thoroughly cleaned once a week. And even though it's reusable, I don't think it's shareable. If a reusable mask you throw in a washing machine, and yeah, you can probably share it with someone else. But something like that, I would not want to be shared between students and between adults. I think we have to assign them to a specific student, and that is always their mask.
Yep, I agree.
So I support. It's a lot of money, but I feel like we need to do it. Anyone opposed to that? And Alicia could chime in if she wanted to, but I feel like we're obligated there.
Yeah, we are definitely obligated to purchase those.
Okay.
Okay, the next thing I have, safety training videos. I would like to actually just have Katie take a look at it from the communications committee. There's a whole bunch of different videos and things in there that they may want to look at and see what they did and get their own ideas, because I don't think we actually need to do this if we're able to make our own videos, but it might be worthwhile to have them take a look at those. The nurse, we're getting ready to interview for the nurse. That's going. Just a heads up, we did order signage today, so all of that has been done. Gabe has ordered sanitizer. He's ordered freestanding sanitation stations, so those are all done. Food service, that's the heating one. So here's another one that I want an action on. So these are touch-free thermometers. I really feel like each nurse needs to have one. Right now, the ones we have at LER, you put them in their ear. So if we can purchase some of these touch-free thermometers, I think it'd be really important to have that at our schools.
I agree. Anyone in opposition? Okay.
Awesome. Let me just look at the very bottom here. So we talked last week about these cameras for the fields. Is this still going to be to be discussed?
That does need to be discussed. I'm a little concerned that it's 6:30. And I think that this is a conversation that probably needs to take a little more time than what we have today. Nate, you are still logged in. Can we make this a priority to be discussed next week?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, why don't we do that? And Nate, your other question, will the facility use recommendation be approved here or at the school board? I think, technically I probably have that ability to approve it, but I'm hoping to take a lot of information that we discussed today, share it all with the board, and just get the board's nod of approval for all of it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So Karen, if we move the camera discussion for athletics to next week, do you have anything else?
That's it for tonight. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, and I'm sorry that I'm pushing. The other conversation, we just needed to engage in the conversation about our return to school plan. So that was an important discussion that I didn't want to rush. All right, so given that, that's really all that I have. I am working with staff to finalize the staff handbook. We have a template of a student handbook. that we will be working on very shortly. As soon as the staff handbook is complete, I will share it with this committee, hopefully by next week, if not before. I also want to put it in the hands of the school board shortly thereafter. So, anything else before we call it a night? All right, I don't see anyone raising their hand, so thank you all very much. I'm sorry that this went over. I appreciate your patience. Have a great night. I will see some of you later this week. I will see the rest of you next Monday at 4 o'clock.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Terry, I still see you on there. Do you need anything from me?